Paul.
Aye.
Buse-
Here.
Busey, Burns,
Here.
Burrows, Clardy, Cole,
Here.
Gonzalez, Howard,
Here.
Lalani, Rainey.
Here.
Got a quorum.
Quorum is present. As a reminder, anyone wishing to testify before the committee, please register at the kiosk located in the hallways behind the hearing rooms. If you require assistance in registering or testifying, please contact the committee staff. Thank you, members, for being here early on a Monday morning. We are going to take up pending business real quick. The chair lays out HB 2026 by Chairman Darby as pending business. The chair offers a committee substitute. The bill amends the rules regarding the Rural Veterinarian Incentive Program. Members, this is one we had a question about the fiscal note that has since been solved. Is there any objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? The chair hears none, and the substitute is adopted. Representative Rainey moves that HB 2026 as substituted reported favorably to the full House with a recommendation that do pass and be printed. Clerk, please call the roll.
Kemple.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Busey, Burns. Burrows, Clardy, Cole. Gonzalez, Howard.
Aye.
Lalani, Rainey. 6 ayes.
6 ayes, 0 nays, 0 pending Bs. The motion prevails. Chair lays out HB 4571 by Busey as pending business. The bill requires coordinating board to establish a hunger-free campus program and work with institutions to find solutions for hunger. Representative Howard moves that HB 4571 without amendment be reported favorably to the full House with recommendation do pass to be printed. Clerk, call the roll.
Kemple.
Aye.
Paul.
Aye.
Busey, Burns. Burrows, Clardy, Cole. Gonzalez, Howard. Lalani, Rainey.
Being 6 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 pending Bs, the motion prevails. Thank you, members. Chair lays out HB 2108 and recognizes Mr. Allison to explain.
Thank you, Chair Kemple, members, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 2108, which relates to the eligibility for tuition and fee exemptions at public institutions of higher education for certain students who are under the conservatorship of the Department of Family and Protective Services. It just has the bill just has two very simple changes. There's when the bill or the existing statute goes through the qualifications to qualify for the tuition and fee exemption, there's two spots where there's a trigger date, apparently of September 1st, 2009, that seems to be inconsistent with the general requirement that you have to enroll by the age 25 and appears to be unnecessary and reportedly is causing concerns and problems where a student who would otherwise be eligible because she or he had not reached age 25, these two provisions
Please show Ms. Gonzalez present.
conflict with that. And that's basically it. So the bill simply takes out those two references to 2009 that don't seem to affect anything else in the existing law and makes it clear that the age 25 is really the operative fact. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the best I can. Respectfully request the right to close.
We'll give you the right. Mr. Allison, members, we have any questions? Thank you, Mr. Allison.
Thank you.
Oh, Steve, don't go far, sir. We have some registered, but they're not testifying. So go ahead, we'll have you close.
With that, respectfully request favorable action on this bill if you agree with me on the changes, and respectfully request to be sent to local and consent calendars. With that, I'll close.
Thank you, Mr. Allison. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 2108? Hearing none, Mr. Allison closes. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Thank you, sir. Chair lays out HB 3790 and recognizes Chairman Wilson to explain his bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Members, good morning.
Mr. Chairman, you have a substitute, is that
I
correct?
do.
The chair offers a committee substitute to HB 3790. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Committee Substitute HB 3790 provides clarification regarding the scholarships provided to students contracted by the Joint Admission Medical Program, also known as JAMP. The Joint Mission Medical Program is a special program created by the Texas Legislature to create an undergraduate workforce pipeline to close the gaps between participation and success for economically disadvantaged Texas resident students pursuing a medical education. The current students enrolled within the program attending certain private or independent institutions have reported difficulty receiving the scholarship provisioned under the Education Code. A lack of clarity in the language has caused confusion as to whether the statute requires a separate scholarship or if any scholarships the student has earned satisfies the requirement of the JAMP program. In order to provide clarity, HB 3790, or this committee substitute, changes the language to read, quote, an additional scholarship to a participating student outside of existing scholarship monies being received. Representatives from both the Joint Admission Medical Program and some of the affected students are here today to testify in agreement that this wording will bring clarity and will resolve the issue. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, I respectfully reserve the right to.
Give you that right, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you,
Thank you. Chair calls Joel Robles. Good morning. We have you registered as Joel Robles, testifying on behalf of the Joint Admission Medical Program, testifying on the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Joel Robles. I am the Program Director of the Joint Admission Medical Program, here to serve as a resource witness on the bill, and happy to answer any questions.
Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Is there anyone else wish to testify? Oh, excuse me. Somebody popped up. Sorry. Chair calls Christine Meyer.
Good morning, Chairman.
Good morning. We show you registered as Christine Meyer, testifying on behalf of yourself for the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you,
that's
ma'am.
correct. I just want to say that I am a member of the JAMP program and is a very important program to underrepresented and underfunded students in the state of Texas. And on behalf of the other students who attend private institutions, we are very happy that we have come to the conclusion with JAMP that we are making these changes so the clarification is more clear when it comes to providing the provisions under the legislation in the program.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for being here. Members, do we have any questions? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 3790? If not, the chair recognizes Mr. Wilson to close on his bill.
Thank you, sir. Members, very impressed with these young folks who have coordinated with the Joint Mission Medical Program as well as the independent college and universities of Texas to work out this clarifying language. It's an honor to carry it, and thank you so much for letting me present it today. And with that, I close and request that go to local and consent.
Thank you, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you.
The committee substitute for HB 3790 is withdrawn. If, excuse me. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending.
Let's do Representative Cole next. She's got a. 38.
Chair lays out HB 3338 and recognizes Representative Cole to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. House Bill 3338 is a bipartisan legislation meant to tackle the ongoing fentanyl crisis both in our state and at our higher education institutions. Under this bill, an institute of higher education must create and implement a policy regarding the availability of Narcan on campus and the training on how to safely and administer Narcan by a residential advisor in a dorm hall if a fentanyl overdose occurs in the dorm hall. A residential advisor will be able to obtain a prescription for Narcan through a prescription that a higher institution will receive from a physician, including the immunities for the residential advisors and universities from criminal liability for administering and possessing Narcan. The fentanyl crisis is not only an emergency item for this legislative session, but it's an emergency all across the country. If this were bill to pass and be signed into law, it would save countless lives on our college campuses in Texas. I'm open to any questions you may have, and I reserve my right to close.
Thank you, Ms. Cole. We'll give you that. We have, we don't have, just, if you don't mind staying there, we have some folks registered for it, but not willing to testify. So is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against HB 3338? Hearing none, Chair recognizes Ms. Cole to close.
This bill will recognize serious problems at our colleges and universities, and I ask your approval.
Thank you,
I
ma'am.
close.
If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The bill is left pending. Chair lays out HB 3140 and recognizes Chairman King to explain his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please show Mr. Clardy present.
I'm
Go ahead, sir.
excited to see Mr. Clardy's up before
We all,
9.
we're all are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to lay out House Bill 3140. As many of you are aware, school safety is paramount this session. I've been working on a number of school safety initiatives for a while. In fact, later this week, we're going to hear school safety bills on major state, I believe on Wednesday of this week. You cannot talk about school safety without talking about the lack of mental health professionals in our schools today. So what House Bill 3140 is about is it would improve public schools' ability to recruit and retain mental health professionals to work in our school districts by adding mental health professionals to the Teach for Texas Loan Repayment Assistant Program. The fact is, no matter what you pay these healthcare professionals, they frankly they don't exist in number. Our colleges aren't graduating the people that we need in our classroom, and I hope this would be an incentive to get more young people to go through our university systems and be willing to take on this difficult challenge. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would reserve my right to close.
Mr. King, thank you, sir. Members, do you have any questions for Mr. King? Don't go far. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against HB 3140? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Mr. King to close on his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just quickly, if some of you are wondering why this bill isn't part of the school safety initiatives we're going to hear later this week, in the House we have rules, we have parliamentary procedures, we have 2 subject rules. So there is a whole package of these bills that all go together. Unfortunately, they have to be laid out separately. With that, I close.
Thank you, sir. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, the bill is left pending.
We can do Rainey or Howard.
You ready?
Sure.
Chair lays out HB 2642 and recognizes Ms. Howard to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2642 simply directs the institutions of higher education to send an email every fall to their students with information about the state's women's health programs. This is an opportunity for us to make a relatively small and easy fix that could have life-changing impact on a person's life. Being made aware of health programs for the student who is uninsured and in need of women's health care could be the difference between successfully completing coursework rather than potentially dropping out of college due to an unintended pregnancy. Furthermore, this bill is necessary because we have seen a decrease in clients served within this demographic. Between 2020 and 2021, there was a 14% decrease in clients aged 18 to 24 in the Healthy Texas Women program. In the Family Planning program, there was a 17% decrease, and in the Breast and Cervical Cancer Services program, there was a 3% decrease in clients served. We've invested millions of dollars into these health programs and been working hard to build capacity. This is just one more thing that we can do to ensure eligible Texans are aware that these programs exist to provide life-altering health care. Happy to answer any questions and reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Ms. Howard. We'll give you that right. Chair calls Hayden Cohen. Good morning. Thank you for being here today. We show you as testified as Hayden Cohen, testifying on behalf of Young Invincibles and self in favor of the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
Thank you.
correct. Good morning, members and Chair Kemple. My name is Hayden Cohen, and I'm an advocate with Young Invincibles, a national nonpartisan nonprofit organization dedicated to amplifying the voices of young people in the political process and expanding economic opportunity. I'm in support of HB 2642 and ask that you support it too. This bill would allow students like me to be informed of the more ways to receive necessary medical care affordably in Texas. Oftentimes when 18-year-olds like me start college, we're learning how to adult and navigate the tricky world of healthcare. An email from our college informing us that there are programs and ways to stay healthy and take care of our medical-related needs, as well as how to enroll in these programs, would be tremendously helpful and would take care of some of the burden off of us to have to search around and figure out where and how we can receive this care. Many of us coming into college from public Texas schools didn't receive the valuable information of family planning and taking care of our reproductive health. Nobody was teaching us about birth control or how to access gynecological exams affordably. This simple, straightforward email would help guide college students into their first steps of taking care of their reproductive and general health. Myself and close friends of mine are starting their freshman year of college and want to start birth control, or maybe we're having menstrual issues, but have no idea how to find medical providers, yet alone ones we can afford or programs we can enroll in. This process for doing so can be very tricky, especially for a new adult, and that's where their simple, quick, but vital email comes in. Without this, STD rates and unplanned pregnancies and many other reproductive issues will continue to increase. If you want to help young people in the state stay healthy and informed, passing House Bill 2642 is the way to do it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Members, we have any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 2642? Hearing none, Chair recognizes Mrs. Howard to close.
Thank you. I close.
Thank you. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, the bill is left pending. Chair lays out HB 2177 and recognizes Representative Stuckey. Ms. Stuckey, you have a sub?
Yes, sir.
Representative Paul offers a committee substitute to House Bill 2177.
Thank you, Chair and members. House Bill 2177 is the work of industry leaders listening to the work of Community College Finance Commission and delivering on solutions that address the concerns of that commission. In this case, we are talking about the ongoing burden of the cost of textbooks and other learning materials. The committee substitute before you was crafted with input from various stakeholders working on innovative solutions for the next generation of college students. HB 2177 proposes a pilot program for a digital textbook delivery service that will allow institutions to explore different options for students. The goal would be for students on day one to have access to high-quality digital course materials. Think of it kind of like a Netflix for college course materials. The bill authorizes the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board to set the criteria for determining quality content and access to relevant technical support. An important component would be ensuring accessibility standards for students with disabilities. The board would also seek input from stakeholders across the industry, including publishers and bookstore operators. At the conclusion of the program, the board produced a report for the legislature, the governor, and others on the effectiveness of the program in improving students' outcomes. I believe this program is a step in the right direction for our colleges and universities. It has the potential to reduce costs, expand availability of materials, and open the door for the next generation of students in higher ed. At this time, I'm happy to answer any questions. If not, I'll reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Ms. Stuckey. Don't go forward. Is there anyone wishing to testify on for or against HB 2177? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Mr. Stuckey to close.
Thank you, Representative and Chairman Kemple. Thank you and members, and I ask for your favorable consideration and request that this bill go to the general calendar. And I close.
Thank you, Mr. Stuckey.
It's a great bill, Representative Clardy.
He already knew that.
Thank you.
Committee substitute for HB 2177 is withdrawn. And if there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, the bill's pending. Mr. Rainey. Chair lays out HB 5146 and recognizes Representative Rainey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Kemple and members, for allowing me the opportunity to lay out House Bill 5146. For several sessions now, the committee has passed bills to improve our understanding of the post-secondary education landscape for Texas students with intellectual disabilities. House Bill 5146 builds upon that work and responds to what we now know. Texas needs more institutions of higher education with vetted and proven programs for students with intellectual disabilities. We can make that happen by establishing the Building Better Futures program. CTP programs are comprehensive transition and post-secondary programs approved by the U.S. Department of Education, unlock access to federal student aid for students with intellectual disabilities. CTP programs also offer meaningful credentials and occupational skills training, resulting in employment and improved economic self-sufficiency. Only 4 CTP programs exist in the state, which is far too few to upskill the roughly 4,000 Texas students with intellectual disabilities at Texas high school every year. House Bill 4156 is a simple bill that supports improving access to post-secondary education and occupational skills training for students with intellectual disabilities by supporting institutions for higher education approved by or awaiting approval from the U.S. Department of Education to offer a CTP program. We have 2 witnesses here that can speak more on this issue, and I understand the Higher Education Coordinating Board has a staff member here to serve as a resource witness. Members, thank you for your time, and I yield for questions and reserve the right to close.
Give you that right. Thank you, Mr. Rainey. Chair calls Ashley Ford. Good morning. Thank you for being here. We show you registered as Ashley Ford, testifying on behalf of the ARC of Texas in favor of the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank
yes,
you, ma'am.
Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. My name is Ashley Ford. I am with the ARC of Texas, and we are in support of House Bill 5146 by Representative Rainey. I'm also the presiding officer of the Advisory Council on Post-Secondary Education for Persons with IDD at the Higher Education Coordinating Board. And through that work, it has really become apparent that Texas is behind the ball when it comes to offering programs designed for students with intellectual disabilities on college campuses throughout the state. Just to sort of give you an example of this. So the state of Florida has 21 approved CTPs. Tennessee has 7. Louisiana has 5. Pennsylvania has 12. So in a state as large as Texas, having these comprehensive transition and post-secondary programs would be really great, so we can ensure that students with intellectual disabilities have the opportunity to get credentials that result in meaningful employment and economic self-sufficiency. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the bill.
Ms. Ford, thank you. Members, do you have any questions? None. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Chair calls Vicki Mitchell. Good morning.
Good morning.
We show you registered as Vicki Mitchell, testifying on behalf of yourself, on the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yes. I've been in education over 53 years, both as a general education teacher as well as in higher education. I've been in special education over 40 years, and I've served as the chair of the Continuous Advisory Committee, former chair, for the Texas Education Agency, and also on the Texas Higher Ed Coordinating Board on post-secondary programs for students with IDDs. So this is an area of mine. I can tell you that in the public schools, we prepare the students for post-secondary education and employment. The Foundation High School program is amazing. It helps students to be career and college military ready. The problem is if you have an intellectual disability, it requires additional training and support, certainly beyond what the 4 years, or if you stay till 21, provides you. that support needs to be in actual employment. So it begs to say that continued education, being able to be a lifelong learner, is extremely important. But the barrier right now for students with intellectual disabilities to be able to do that is because there is not much federal funding. They are not able to apply for the financial aid that other students are able to apply for because they are not in degreed or approved programs. This particular bill would enable that to happen by Texas supporting the Comprehensive Transition, the CTP programs, which is designated federally. Then, for instance, at the university where I teach, if we were designated a CTP, then those students would be able to apply for financial aid. The benefit to that is that for Texas, it helps us to meet the 60 by 30. It also helps us, as one of 27 states being employment first, to add students with intellectual disabilities to that. There is what's called TIBSIT grants that are from the federal government in Washington. The problem with that is that as a university, you can only apply every 5 years. At our institution, we had in 2020, 2 people get COVID, that we weren't able to finish the application. We have to wait until 2025. So this particular bill opens the door for students to be able to receive financial aid. But there also is something that's another benefit to Texas, and that is to be a CTP program, you have to prove to the designating entity, the federal one, that you have a program that's going to have outcomes and good results. Right now in Texas, as Ashley said, we only have 4. We do have other programs for IDD, but they do not necessarily have outcomes, and that's extremely important, that they're not attending college, paying bills, and they leave with the same results of going home and doing nothing, which they could have done at the age of 18. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Members? Ma'am? Ma'am? We have a question for you.
Certainly.
Representative Clardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your testimony here today. 2 things. You said you presently teach at one of the universities or institutions here. Where is that? But the second important question is, you're talking about deliverables where you're showing, can you give me, at least from your experience at your institution, some anecdotal or empirical evidence or some statistics to show that support of a program like this will increase in a significant way the employment possibilities for those who may have intellectual disabilities?
Absolutely. The statistics I would need to mail to you. I am with Sam Houston State University. I'm a professor. I'm the executive director of the Garrett Center on Transition and Disability Studies and the Garrett Endowed Chair on Special Education. We, in our capacity, work not only with the public schools to try and help train and provide technical assistance and resource to help students with all disabilities, including ID, to get jobs. As a university, it is we are in the process of trying to develop a program, but just like a business, you have to have the money. And the money in post-secondary comes through tuition or through donations. Not a lot of corporations are going to donate money to a program that serves a small number because it does require more training and support. So it's not like you can have 200 in a class like you can a freshman intro class to English or something like that. You're going to have a smaller number. So as a result, as a university, we have struggled because you can't put the program in place and hope that the people will come and pay money. The universities and a business just won't let you do that. You have to find the funding sources first. So I can guarantee you that if we were able to get that funding source in place, because we're not a big flagship university, we would immediately be able to do something. I mean, we've been working with our university to get a rural online program for those students like in Pecos, Texas, who have absolutely no access to post-secondary. They can't go to an online program at a typical university, but we know how to do that. So
Well, if you would, please, it sounds like a laudable program. Appreciate Representative Rainey bringing the bill. It's just we've got this thorny thing around here. We got to make sure we spend tax dollars. We get good return on our investment. So if you have statistics you can submit and circulate to the committee, I would very much appreciate that.
I can do that. And the good thing about this bill is there is no fiscal note.
Well, there you have it.
It's a win-win.
All right. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Members? Chair calls Sabrina Gonzalez Salcedo. Thank you and good morning. We show you registered as Sabrina Gonzalez Salcedo, testifying on behalf of Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities on the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, that is
Thank you,
correct.
ma'am.
Chair Kemple and committee members, thank you for the opportunity to provide comments on HB 5146. TCDD is established by state and federal law and is governed by 27 board members appointed by the governor. The council's purpose in law is to encourage policy change so that people with disabilities have opportunities to be fully included in their communities and exercise control over their own lives. I have some prepared comments, but I wanted to touch on some of the comments that have been made previously about the importance of return on investment. I have some statistics here that Texas and national data shows that 72% of CTP program graduates obtain a job within 2 years of completing the program. And we know that college, more than being an employment readiness program, is also about social interactions with your peers. It also shows that 91% of CTP program participants are satisfied with their social life. And it's also important to note that 52% of students attending CTPs are gainfully employed during their time in the program. So we know that there are great employment outcomes during, while they're attending the program, and afterwards, which is really great. We're really excited in the state of Texas to know that Texas A&M University's Aggie Achieve CTP program is having their first graduating class this year. On social media, you'll see that graduates of this program just received their Aggie ring. So there are some really great opportunities coming up in the state, and we know that this bill would increase those opportunities greatly. TCDD does have grants that are distributed in about 40 each year. And in May of 2022, TCDD approved funding for Texas State University's CTP program, Bobcat RISE, which stands for the Resilience, Independence, Self-Determination, and Empowerment Program. And I want to come back and say that they are not CTP certified yet, but that is their intention. As we talked about, that limitation of funding and that TIPSID grants are only every 5 years. It's their intention to apply for CTP accreditation. And as mentioned, Texas State University's program is a 4-year residential inclusive post-secondary program for students with IDD. And this program expands the breadth of institutional inclusion by welcoming non-traditional students with IDD and empowering them to develop their highest potential, govern their own lives, and participate fully and freely in the community as citizens of Texas, the nation, and the world. TCDD recognizes the importance of investing in the future of Texans with IDD and expanding access to inclusive post-secondary programs for this demographic. The Building Better Futures program would help increase the number of approved CTP programs in the state and increase the number of students with IDD seeking and obtaining post-secondary education. As such, we find the aims of the bill to be consistent with our mission, guiding principles, and public policy priorities. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Please show Dr. Lalani present. Members, do we have any questions? Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 5146? If not, the chair recognizes Mr. Rainey to close.
I close and would ask that we send this to local and consent.
Thank you, sir. With no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, the bill is pending. Chair lays out HB 4631 and recognizes Chairman Longoria to explain the bill.
Thank you,
Mr.
Chairman.
Longoria, you have a sub, is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Chair offers committee substitute to HB 4631.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members, for the opportunity to lay out today's bill. The committee substitute to HB 4631 creates the Opportunity High School Diploma Program, which provides a unique opportunity for adults who have previously dropped out of high school to earn their high school diploma while gaining relevant workforce skills from public junior colleges. As mentioned, this is a committee substitute, and the substitute differs from the original by redrafting it into legislative council format. The Opportunity High School program will be administered by the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board in consultation with the TEA and the Texas Workforce Commission. Under the bill, up to 5 junior colleges may apply to be chosen by the coordinating board for the program. Chosen colleges can collaborate with other colleges, districts, and nonprofit organizations to offer programs to students. Approved colleges will concurrently enroll an eligible student in a workforce education program and the Opportunity High School Diploma program so that they can earn their diploma while completing a post-secondary certificate or degree. In order to obtain a high school diploma, students must perform satisfactorily on a test, which is to be created by rule by the coordinating board. Finally, to ensure that the program is properly evaluated, the coordinating board must submit a report to the legislature on the effectiveness of the program by December 2026 before it sunsets in September 2027. Mr. Chairman and members, thank you for the opportunity to lay out today's bill, and I reserve my right to close.
Thank you, Mr. Longoria. We'll give you that right. Stay right there. Is there anyone wishing to testify on, for, or against 4631? Hearing none, the chair recognizes Mr. Longoria to close.
With that, I close.
Thank you, sir. Committee substitute for HB 4631 is withdrawn. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, the bill is left pending. Chair lays out HB 4578 and recognizes Chairman Longoria to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. House Bill 4578 would allow the University of Texas at Austin to operate under their current admission standards should the use of race in admissions be ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. All Texans know the top 10% law directs state schools to automatically admit all students who graduate in the top 10% of their graduating high school class. The only exception to that statute is the University of Texas at Austin. This exception was granted due to the capacity and resource issues as well as lack of institutional flexibility. UT is allowed to cap their automatic admissions at 75% of the incoming undergraduate class. The other 25% of the UT class can be admitted under a holistic review, which includes the following factors: class rank, academic background, test scores, achievements, essays, recommendation, and other special circumstances such as socioeconomic status, experience in a single-parent home, or family responsibilities. We have a resource witness from the university that can speak in detail to the admissions process. Unfortunately, the academic successes over the last 10 years that the university has achieved are at risk. It is possible that in the summer, the Supreme Court will strike down the use of race as a factor for college admission. If that occurs, Section K of the Education Code would go into effect, which would not allow UT to operate under their automatic admission exception. If UT was required to admit all students in the top 10% of their high school class, an additional 4,000 students a year are estimated to enroll at the university, and they do not have the capacity to support that. Members, HB 4578 does not change any admission standards required by statute. It allows the University of Texas to operate under its current standards should the Supreme Court prohibit the consideration of race in admissions. Again, there's a resource witness from the university.
Ms. Gonzalez.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned in your layout due to capacity. You said two reasons, due to capacity. Who determines the university's capacity?
I would assume possibly the university. Maybe they can clarify that.
Well, it's your bill, so I have more questions. What is the current UT student population?
I do not have those numbers. The university could give you the most frequent.
How has it ever been larger than has the student population ever been larger than it is right now?
I don't think so. I think it's progressively grown.
You don't think so, but you're not sure.
Well, you can ask the resource witness for that.
Have we invested in building more buildings on campus?
I think the university's tried doing that, but because they're landlocked, it makes it very difficult.
So you still don't think we've been building any new buildings on campus?
Well, I think they've tried to build new buildings, and they've tried getting supplemental housing for students.
Are there more professors?
You might want to ask the university.
So you said the timeline, but the court case isn't for UT, it's for Stanford and UNC. Is that accurate?
That's correct, but if it were to apply,
if it were to apply, but we don't know yet.
We don't know
so
this.
You're asking, let me just be really clear. The top 10% rule is very critical to access for so many of our students. As a principal, I never liked the fact that we capped it. I think it's problematic, and I think the questions regarding capacity are overstated. But nonetheless, what I'm really concerned with is already putting into law something that we don't know if is going to affect us. There's a reason that we put in those specifications, and without considerations of all these other communities in which you could potentially be hurting, saying, okay, if we're going to repeal this, this is what we should supplement it with. You're just going to repeal it with no consideration of what should be in place for it. Does that feel accurate?
You say so.
The other thing you say is what you mentioned in your layout, the lack of institutional flexibility. What does that mean to you?
Well, I think they're adhering to the statute. So whatever the statute requires them to do, they're going to do. And that's what they've been doing. So like if the Supreme Court says you can't do this, and then they're left in a situation where they have to accept the top 10%, I mean, I don't know if they have the authority. I don't know if they have the authority to kind of diminish that because they don't have the capacity for the students.
The legislature made very clear that if we were going to allow them to have a cap, that there would still be other things to consider. That's why we have Section K, that you would consider whether a student had a child, whether their families, you would consider all these other things because the top 10% rule was a really critical access point for so many families. And so we said, okay, if you want to cap it based on, I would argue, false capacity concerns, then you still have to do this 25%. But you're just saying, get rid of the 25% guidelines and just let it be a free-for-all without there being something from the legislature saying we still have a we still have a priority for these students who need access.
Well, there'd be no changes. What it's trying to do is if the court rules that they can't, what the bill's doing is basically if the Supreme Court rules and the section no longer applies, the university wants to continue.
That's not what your bill says.
Well, the university wants to continue to do what
your
the
bill
university
just says you're going to repeal it before we even know what the Supreme Court says, before we know the Supreme Court case is going to be applicable to us. There's lots of questions. So before we even get there, you want to already repeal something that the legislature was very intentional in putting in. I just think there's lots of questions.
Well, we have a resource witness, so you can ask them.
Thank you, Mr. Longoria. Members, any more questions? Mr. Clardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Chairman Longoria, for being here and laying out this bill. I'm just kind of new to this discussion, but it sounds like to me what you're trying to do is think ahead of what may happen if there's an adverse ruling in the Supreme Court to avoid any kind of upheaval or disruption in normal academic affairs. Is that what we're trying to do?
That's exactly what it is.
Okay. And this bill that you've come up with, you've been working with the stakeholders on this up until this point in time?
Yes, sir.
All right. And I would enjoy the opportunity to continue the conversation about maybe some of the points that Representative Gonzalez has laid out. But this is a good faith effort, you believe, on your part in the institution to be able to provide a level of academic rigor and to protect the reputation and academic standing of the institution to continue if something does happen, unanticipated or not. I guess it is anticipated that it could happen with the Supreme Court. And so this is a kind of a fail-safe measure to just make sure that the university has a good go-forward plan depending upon the contingencies.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Clardy, thank you. Mr. Longoria, we'll bring you back up.
All right, thank you.
How about this second? Do that. Chair calls Hasib Abdullah.
Chair, members, my name is Hasib Abdullah. I am representing only myself, and I am for this bill. The reason I am testifying is for several reasons. The top 10% rule in general has a lot of pros to it, We heard some of them from representatives just right now, but I think the cons outweigh the pros in general. This is not getting rid of the top 10%, I understand, but I know friends and family members who are just focused on school and, grades and GPA and not extracurricular activities and volunteering and work and sports and stuff. And these are very impressionable people because you're told since middle school, if you just have a certain grade point average, in this case, top 10%, you're going to get into great schools. Specifically UT, has a little bit of a leeway where high school students don't know exactly where they're going to fall. Maybe if you're the top 4 or 3%, you know you're going to get into UT. But a lot of other students do not. And I think that is what makes this a little bit good, that I wish we could expand this to all universities, where there's so much good that comes from just geographic diversity and socioeconomic diversity from top 10% rule. But just telling middle school and high school students, just focus on grades, GPA, don't care about extracurricular activities. And I mean, no one says that, but it's implied, causes warped outcomes. And I know people who just focused on grades, play video games, and don't worry about sports and extracurricular activities and other things. I'll say with the UT one, it gives sovereignty and agency to this university, but I would like to see expand to all universities where they can decide at least for a percentage, in this case 25%, where they can decide what factors go into having colleges and institutions being engines of social mobility and economic upbringing. And so I do think there's good debates on both sides with this bill, but I think this bill allowing, irregardless of what the Supreme Court does, keeping UT, allowing them this flexibility and sovereignty to make this decision for at least just a quarter of their class size, I think is appropriate. I would say, I don't know if we can do it in debate in the House, but I really think this would be a good middle ground for Texas to spread to all the universities to give them sovereignty and power to decide what they want to do, at least for a small percentage. Thank you for your time and thank you for your service.
Mr. Abdullah, thank you. Members, do we have any questions? None. Members, y'all want a resource?
I know the answers.
I figured. Do you, yes or no? No. Okay. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against HB 4578? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Chairman Longoria to close on his bill.
Thank you, Chairman. If no further questions, I close.
One further question.
Yes,
Ms.
go ahead.
Gonzalez.
I want to go back to what Representative Clardy asked. I think let me just be really clear about my frustrations. Obviously, I'm frustrated. Number one, it doesn't supplement or create something else to replace the very intentional 25% guidelines the legislature put in place. We allowed UT Austin to have a cap with the conditions that the 25% would still have some types of guardrails, and there's nothing there. Just like, okay, you can't do it, you don't want to do it. Number two, at minimum, I think the questions of capacity are really questionable and overstated. I think the utilization rate of the university can be expanded. And number three, it doesn't have a trigger point. So if the Supreme Court says this, then this. It's just like, let's just repeal it now without even any understanding of whether or not it's going to impact UT. So those are my very real concerns.
Thank you.
Ms. Gonzalez, thank you. Members? None.
I close.
Thank you, sir. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, HB 4578 is pending. The chair lays out HB 3851 and recognizes Representative Paul to explain the bill. Ms. Paul, you have a sub, is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you. The chair offers a committee substitute to HB 3851.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I have a committee substitute for HB 3851 that makes it a legislative council draft. That's all. The Texas Holocaust, Genocide, and Anti-Semitism Adversary Commission's 2022 study of anti-Semitism in Texas included a recommendation to consider prohibiting state-funded college or university from implementing boycotts that would deprive students or faculty members of the ability to study or conduct research in or about a foreign country or to interact with its scholars or representative. Since 2017, Texas has prohibited state agencies from contracting with companies that boycott Israel. This prohibition is one of the strongest anti-boycott divestments and sanction laws in the nation, but there's no such provision for public institutions of higher education. House Bill 3581 would direct the Higher Education Coordinating Board to prohibit public institutions of higher education from adopting academic boycotts. This bill would, however, allow for academic boycotts if the target of the boycott is a state sponsor of terrorism, as defined by the U.S. Department of State, as currently North Korea, Iran, and Syria. The bill does not seek to infringe on the rights of individual citizens, but rather to align state law related to boycott, divestments, and sanctions on public university campuses with existing Texas anti-BDS laws. We have the Commissioner of the Texas Holocaust, Genocide, and Anti-Semitism Advisory Commission, Sandra Parker, here to testify. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm answering any questions and reserve the right to close.
Good morning. The chair calls Sandra Parker.
Thank you.
We show you registered as Sandra Parker, testifying on behalf of Texas Holocaust Genocide Anti-Semitism Advisory Commission and yourself for the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman and distinguished members of this committee, for allowing me to speak here in support of House Bill 3851. My name is Sandra Parker, and I'm privileged to be here today in my capacity as a commissioner on the Texas Holocaust Genocide and Anti-Semitism Advisory Commission, which is a subdivision of the Texas Historical Commission. Our mission is to combat and confront hatred, prejudice, and indifference by educating Texans about the Holocaust and other genocides in an effort to dismantle anti-Semitism and prevent such future atrocities. Our commission, which conducted a legislatively mandated study on anti-Semitism in Texas and presented its findings to the legislature this past December, included in it a recommendation to consider legislation prohibiting certain academic boycotts of foreign countries by publicly funded institutions of higher education. This recommendation was based on research gleaned from interviews and conversations with students and college faculty who saw the boycott, divest, and sanctions movement gaining momentum among students, departments, and academic units. So much so that these campaigns have at times led to anti-Semitic acts against Jewish students. And if the lessons learned in the classroom today become the public policies taught in the square tomorrow, then within these classrooms, intellectual discourse, academic freedom, and freedom of speech are sacrosanct and essential to achieving true understanding. Despite this, Jewish students, Jewish groups, and those who support them find themselves having these sacred rights abridged in our colleges and universities through the BDS movement. BDS weaponizes our wallets and our classrooms with the goal of isolating, delegitimizing, and ultimately destroying the Jewish people and the Jewish state. Consider recent events at various Texas universities. Last week, UT Dallas student government passed a divestment resolution called Divest from Death and condemned their university for consistently, knowingly, and directly facilitating and enabling human rights violations as a part of Israel apartheid war crimes and military occupation. Students at U of H and UT have promoted similar BDS resolutions. Last spring, the UT Austin chapter of the Palestine Solidarity Committee tried to repeal the university's adoption of the IHRA definition of anti-Semitism, arguing that it infringed on free speech. In response to this effort to repeal the definition, our commission interviewed Texas Hillel students at UT Austin after this effort, and they said in part, "The experience for Jewish students was that my student government is going to repeal a definition that protects me from discrimination." Another said students feel the anxiety of anti-Israel sentiment on campus. Another said, "We know this is going to flare up again next year. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole." Boycotting Israel on campuses is not freedom of speech or expression or thought. This behavior is not meant to provide a legitimate critique of a nation or its people. It's harassment that is aimed to silence and shut down the perspective of Jewish students, the Jewish nation, and those that support them. Both sides of any argument deserve to be heard, but at present there is one side that is using the First Amendment as both a sword to inflict its harm and then as a shield with which to protect itself from the consequences of that harm. Allowing this behavior to stifle speech and academic freedom on our campuses is at odds with the free thinking and safe environments our state's colleges strive to create. So too should Texas act now to protect and preserve the liberty of our colleges and their students to pursue true academic freedom. This is not a Jewish issue, it's not an Israel issue, it's a human issue. And Texas should not respond in kind, Texas should respond in strength. In strength by passing this bill, which will be an eternal guidepost to our institutions of higher learning and those that matriculate within them, that valid intellectual discourse and equal access to educational opportunities should not be mutually exclusive. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Excuse me. Ms. Howard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you help me understand what this would look like if this bill were implemented? What would you see happening differently on campuses?
So I think on campus, in terms of, any type of anti-Israel sentiment or anything like that, or sentiment against any country for that matter, wouldn't stop because it doesn't control speech of any kind or conduct of any kind. Where we have a Texas anti-BDS statute already codified in the law, which of course is a contracting statute, this isn't a contracting statute. It's really more of a codification that Texas schools aren't going to cut off academic exchange with any foreign country, not just Israel. Our commission obviously is focused on anti-Semitism and did the study with an anti-Semitism focus because that's what the legislative mandate required. But the bill is totally neutral with respect to any foreign country. So for instance, if somebody were to come and to say, we don't agree with what Russia's doing in Ukraine, we're not automatically going to put a wall up and prevent every single academic exchange or learning program within the University of Texas system and its schools because a country is doing something that people don't agree with. So on campus, per se, it's not going to change speech or discourse or dialogue or anything like that. It's really more of like, because you don't wait for the flood to build the ark, just underpinning that no matter what happens on campus with respect to student resolutions or what have you, that academic exchange is not going to be stifled between America and Israel or any other country for that matter.
I think I understand your intention here, but I'm still trying to picture what that actually would look like in terms of how the higher education institutions would operate. I mean, I'm still trying, I understand you're saying it should not infringe upon freedom of speech.
Correct.
But what it is asking is that something take place, and I'm still trying to get my head around what that something is in terms of what the institution could or could not do.
The institution, it's asking that the institution not cut off academic exchange with any foreign country, unless they're on the state-sponsored terrorism list, of course, like North Korea, Iran, countries that we already don't engage with for reasons that are legislated by the federal government.
So not cut off academic exchange.
Academic programs, foreign exchange programs, if a student wants to go study in that, if they have a satellite campus or, what have you, or, things of that nature.
And so is that happening right now?
So with respect to Israel, what's happening right now is that students, like for instance at UT Dallas, they're calling for total divestment, and they're tying it to what they claim is Israel apartheid. And so, of course, divestment means funds and things of that nature. And so it's really more of like, this is what comes first, and then the next comes this. If divestment is successful in their campaign, right now it's merely a resolution, are they going to be calling for academic exchange with one of our greatest allies in the Middle East and a bastion of tech knowledge and, all of these other innovations to be totally cut off from Texas and other University of Texas the state system? And we don't want that to happen with Israel. We don't want it to happen with any country, which is why the bill is very clear that this is not an Israel-focused bill. This is a bill that can be used to protect academic exchange with any country, provided it's not on the state-sponsored terrorism list. Again, our commission conducted the study through the prism of anti-Semitism as mandated, but we wanted to come up with a solution that was not just so narrowly tailored to one country, because to do so is extremely short-sighted. It's to make sure that academic exchange is preserved with respect to the University of Texas state system and any school in the state that receives public funding and any foreign country.
So this is preemptive. Nothing has happened. You're anticipating what could potentially happen. Is that correct?
That's correct, based on the kind of increasing drumbeat that all schools, UT Austin, UT Dallas, U of H, cut off totally any type of formal relationship with anything having to do with the nation of Israel. And so we would hate for that to trickle down to academic exchange, colleges and institutions of higher learning.
But it's not happening at this point in time.
It is not happening right now, no.
Thank you.
Thank you, members. Mr. Clardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And the BDS that you referred to, that's boycott,
Divestment,
and what's the
sanctions.
sanctions? Okay, thank you. And I'm sorry, but I don't have a copy of the bill in front of me. But if I'm not mistaken, maybe the members could help me remember this, but I remember then Chairman King, now Senator Phil King, that we passed legislation. Oh, thank you. That's a long one, Dennis. You read the whole thing?
Yeah, look, it's
And,
got 5 sentences.
So, but that we passed legislation, signed into law that says institutions cannot discriminate against, specifically, as I recall, the nation of Israel, in far as investment decisions or divestment or sanctions, boycotts, et cetera. Is that not correct?
Correct. Contracting and things of that nature. Yes, sir.
Right. Okay. And, you know, and so let's assume you got a student group. I think these are student-led organizations or efforts that UTD, where there's, you know, been some activity taken where they're saying we should divest ourselves or boycott or whatever, cease relations with a nation state. But that's just a bunch of students doing what students do, isn't it?
It's students doing what students do, and they're welcome to continue to do it. You know, that's part of the going to college, right?
Right.
Getting a strong constitution about yourself, finding out what you believe and why you believe it. And so what has started as, you know, if you want to say movement, although that term kind of leverages things like wings and halos, when the founders of the BDS movement have unequivocally said that the aim of BDS is to destroy Israel. This bill, even though there is already a contracting bill on the books, you know, a lot of academic exchange isn't necessarily pecuniary. It's not a financial agreement between one school and another school to swap students or ideas. You know, it's academic freedom. And I think that that is something, I know that that is something that all universities judge as sacred. I mean, even in the throes of the pandemic, when there was so many questions about where did it originate and what should we do, and fear was like the, you know, #1 item of the day, it was important to still protect the American students that were studying in China and abroad and vice versa, and not to, you know, throw the baby out with the bathwater. So why this is needed is that no matter what happens with respect to any type of student group or student union, again, you are welcome to espouse whatever idea you like, that colleges and universities within the state of Texas that receive public funds are never going to allow that momentum to actually be carried out into what would be a boycott of a foreign.
I appreciate the intent of the legislation. It just seems we're balancing different interests, but we already have, as you mentioned, national security laws in place for nations that are identified as being hostile to our system of government. That's one set of protections. On the other hand, we have the pecuniary protection that we have through Senator King's bill that's now law on the books. By the same token, what I hate to do in this chamber is that we seem to want to micromanage things from Austin or from a biennial legislature when we have boards of regents for our institutions. We have administrators that are charged with this. We have deans and department heads which have discussions about, aligning with faculty with, whatever project is going on. And I just, I think we should always be wary of something that smacks of a prior restraint or have any kind of chilling effect on the free speech or the First Amendment. So again, I'm understanding of the impetus behind the bill. I just think it may be a little bit of an overkill to preemptively put a ban on this activity.
Well, without the bill, you're leaving a loophole for the state law to be circumvented. Because if there's a school that just does academic exchange with Israel and there's no money exchanged and there's no contract, then I can say our students aren't going to go study in Israel or any other nation. And because I don't have any pecuniary interest in it.
But who would make that decision? Be made at a board level or at a department level, saying we're not going to have a foreign exchange with Israel with our students, or we're not going to have this faculty member come over from the University of Jerusalem come speak at.
Sure, but a board of regents shouldn't be allowed to circumvent the legislative code because that school is receiving public money, and that public money would be facto used for the boycott of an academic.
This legislature, where our law set up, we've delegated that responsibility to an elected by an appointed board that is confirmed by the Senate, and we trust that those people make good decisions in the moment, having superior knowledge to us on a daily basis at a university level. So I think we wind up at the same place, but I trust the folks around the state, whether it's in our judiciary or institutions, that these are good people that are highly qualified, that are motivated to do a good job, and then we're not going to have a problem with this. But hear me, I do appreciate the sentiment and the idea behind the bill. But sometimes, actions can be taken that have it may be counterintuitive, but that sometimes taking an effort like this may actually inflame the other side, that there's perception that you're chilling communication, that you're not allowing people to have these discussions, and that can have a counterproductive effect. That's an opinion. I have no data to point to, but I appreciate the bill, appreciate Representative Paul bringing it in front of us, and look forward to more conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Please show Chairman Burrows present. Mr. Paul.
Yeah, Ms. Parker, I just wanted to clarify a little bit again about some of the questioning that come in here. The only change would be is that a university couldn't discriminate against Israel for whatever reason they so wish, right?
Israel or any other nation. And it's not even discrimination. You're free to discriminate against Israel or any other nation. You're just not free to stop the academic exchange. You're not free to engage in an academic boycott. And that's really it. Again, I'm from the Anti-Semitism Commission, so the study was done through that vein. This applies to any country because no matter what's going on in foreign policy, politics, which changes with the sun and the moon, there should be a steady state with respect to academics and with respect to what our institutions allow. And you should always allow academic exchange unless, like this provides for, there's a true national security threat, et cetera, and then that would apply. But, we didn't think probably a decade ago that we would have to literally adopt a definition of anti-Semitism, which is, if I may, the definition of anti-Semitism that the federal government couldn't pass, even though it uses as a guidepost to judge anti-Semitism globally, and now more than 35 states has, is that anti-Semitism is a certain perception of Jews, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jews. People are saying that that definition violates their free speech, which means that you can't even perceive Jews without hatred. So I understand chilling effects and all of those and preemption and things like that. We aren't saying people can't think, people can't speak, people can't gather, congregate, engage. You can still burn the American flag, the Israel flag, what have you, and engage in any type of discourse that you want. But at the end of the day, the university, which receives government funds, which we already have the BDS law on the books that says our government funds will not be used against Israel, our ally, cannot circumvent that rule by then prohibiting academic exchange with Israel or any other nation.
All right, thank you.
Ms. Parker, thank you.
Thank you.
Chair calls Hasib Abdullah. I'm sure you registered as Hasib Abdullah, testifying on behalf of yourself against the legislation. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, members, my name is Hasib Abdullah. I am against this bill for several reasons. As both the author of this bill and its companion bill that's identical in the Senate version say that this bill will take away from the sovereign, just like the top 10% rule I just talked about, Bill. This bill will take away from the sovereignty and the agency of a higher education institution for making their own decisions, especially like the representative said, this legislature only meets up every 2 years. There's things that change like the sun and the moon all the time. And universities can pivot and do what they want. I'll say as a general statement, I do agree that even those countries that the author talked about that are state sponsors of terror, North Korea, he forgot Cuba, Syria, Iran. I think all exchanges generally should always be had. That's what academic freedom is. That's what you want to be challenged. Your ideas are going to be challenged. Your thoughts are going to be challenged. So as long as there's not a safety issue, the State Department usually has prohibitions on people traveling to certain countries because of safety. I think academic freedom should always be had and interacted with. However, I think this bill is, as the authors actually talked about, and the backup for the Senate bill that happened this past Thursday say, it's viewpoint discrimination, plain and simple. These individuals focus just on one country, and that's their intent. And specifically, these bills accuse others of prejudice and its discrimination. It, I think, kind of aligns a little bit how people were during COVID. People were trying to qualify people and accuse them of racism and prejudice when they asked where the origins of COVID came from, and said mostly some of that was coming in from the Chinese government, saying it was discriminatory. And this is very, very similar when people like to talk about people who are racist and prejudiced and stuff, but they try to hide their own viewpoint discrimination and discrimination themselves. Recently, I would state that with regards to discrimination, a group in this very country, in Israel, mostly made of Jewish people, not too long ago have stated that the actions of this government amount to apartheid against the Palestinians in the West Bank and Gaza. And there's some of their own represented, some of their own citizens as well. I would also state that and many other organizations, Human Rights Watch and others, have also agreed with that. So again, there's dozens of countries that have that as well, but it should be up to the universities themselves to make that decision, not a legislator from Austin every 2 years. The agency and sovereignty should be with the higher education. I would just state that in terms of how fast moving this situation might be is, and I'll be brief, Chair, is there's people in the current administration who, before they got elected, or their cabinet members now, would go to rallies that state death to all Arabs, death to Arabs. Like, imagine just thinking about that in 2023, an author in the Texas House or Texas Senate is trying to promote or keep from people from maybe at least making a decision, maybe in the future, to see if you want to interact with this. This is almost an unbelievable bill. Just recently, during Easter, many people, Christians, recently even Christian leaders said they couldn't practice Easter like they did in the past because the government, not a private organization, the government curtailed their celebrations to the same numbers that they were. We know the discrimination that we have that they have in their version of the Constitution, saying that right of self-determination is only for the majority religion. Imagine what that does to your own citizens' children. A country that tells its own citizens' children that they can't do something, they don't have a right of self-determination, or they don't have a right of housing like others do. So I would just state that if the authors of this bill are so inclined to protect this country, this is Texas, this is America. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men and women are created equal. This is totally against that. If you like that so much, move to those countries. And
Mr. Abdullah, thank you.
And thank you for your time, and thank you for your service.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on, for, or against HB 3851? If not, the chair recognizes Mr. Paul to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I close.
Committee substitute for HB 3851 is withdrawn. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Is there any objection? Chair hears none. The bill is pending. Chair lays out House Bill 1211 and recognizes Mr. Ginn to lay out his bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, there's currently a mental health crisis in our schools, and the lack of trained mental health professionals on campuses has significantly exacerbated the issue. Currently, there are only 3,300 licensed school psychologists, yet there are 8,000 school campuses in Texas. To help address this, we must incentivize mental health professionals to work with schools and facilitate these much-needed services to both students and staff. This bill expands the definition of mental health professionals to include licensed school psychologists and adds those who are employed by a district that are in a federally designated mental health shortage area to the list of occupations eligible for the loan repayment program for mental health professionals. The mental health shortage designation is made by the Health Resources and Services Administration of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services based on a set of criteria that include the population to provider ratio, the availability of services, and the distance individuals must travel to receive care. In order to gain certification as a licensed school psychologist in Texas, an individual must have met a number of requirements, including completion of graduate coursework at a regionally accredited institution of higher education in psychological and educational foundations, interventions, assessments, professional issues, and ethics, and must have completed at least 1,200 hours of supervised experience. These credentials arguably make school psychologists among the most qualified mental health professionals when it comes to working with students and staff, and qualifying them for the loan repayment program will help increase the number of school psychologists available to our students and school staff. I can help answer any questions if you have.
Glad you could read that long layout. I think it was a tie that let him go so freely.
Any questions?
Best again, don't go far.
All right.
Is there anyone wishing to testify? Yes. Oh, we do. Never mind. Chair calls Amanda Fifi.
Yes, hi, thank you.
Good morning. We show you registered as Amanda Fifi, testifying on behalf of Texas Association of School Psychologists, and yourself testifying for the legislation. Is that correct?
Yes,
Thank
that's
you, ma'am.
correct. Yes, thank you, Chair Kumpel and committee members for the opportunity to testify. We urge Texas lawmakers to prioritize loan forgiveness in an attempt to reduce shortages of school psychologists. In Texas, we have a current ratio of 1 school psychologist for every 2,597 students, which is 5 times the recommended ratio of 1 to 500, making Texas the 44th worst ratio of school psychologists to students. 42% of Texas counties do not have a school psychologist. School psychologists work with administrators to design, implement, and garner support for comprehensive school mental health programming, and school mental health programs have been shown to improve educational outcomes by reducing out-of-school suspensions, increasing promotions to the next grade level, decreasing behavior problems, decreasing absences, decreasing discipline referrals, and increasing test scores. School psychologists work with administrators to respond to crises by providing leadership, direct services, and coordination with needed community services. And research has revealed that school staff rate the crisis intervention services provided by school psychologists as very important. Expanding loan forgiveness opportunities to increase the number of students entering and remaining in the field of school psychology is one way for Texas to improve access to school-based mental health professionals, especially in rural and other underserved areas. A shortage of school psychologists across the state of Texas jeopardizes the state's ability to provide essential services and supports to students, schools, and communities. Data indicate that shortages of school psychologists will persist into the future. There is an insufficient number of credentialed school psychology graduates produced by the state's higher education institutions to fill existing gaps. Initiatives designed to promote and support the education and preparation of school psychologists can help mitigate the problem of a shortage. Loan forgiveness of school psychologists ensure Texas fulfills its obligations to state and federal laws that address students with disabilities and school safety. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Members? No questions. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 1211? If not, Chair recognizes Mr. Gann to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I do have a question, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Clardy.
Just to put a bow on it. Is there a fiscal note on this bill? I didn't have that in part of the package I was provided this morning.
No, sir.
And then with respect to the language of the bill, does it prioritize rural mental health care over more well-served areas? Do you differentiate between the different counties or areas of the state, and who can best support these loan repayment programs under the bill?
It narrows down on on school psychologists that work in a district that are in a federally designated mental health shortage area to the list of occupations eligible for the repayment program.
That's perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's no further questions. I close.
No other questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no objection, HB 1211 will be left pending. Hearing none, the bill is pending.
Rainey's 5148.
Chair lays out HB 5148 and recognizes Representative Rainey to explain the bill.
Thank you, Chairman Kimball. Members, I appreciate the opportunity to lay out House Bill 5148. As this committee is well aware, for many Texans, the cost of higher education services is a significant barrier preventing them from accessing the benefit a college education provides. Students with disabilities in particular face a myriad of obstacles when pursuing higher education. Inadequate financial aid and funding options for students with disabilities prevent many students from even attempting to enroll after exiting high school. House Bill 5148 was established the Texas Students with Disabilities Scholarship Program to be administered by the Higher Education Coordinating Board. The purpose of Texas Students with Disabilities Scholarship Program is to aid in the payment of tuition and mandatory fees to enable eligible students to attend institutions of higher education. The Texas Students with Disabilities Scholarship Program is unique in that it has certain provisions to increase accessibility that many traditional scholarship programs do not offer. For example, the Students with Disabilities Scholarship Program would be open to students pursuing certificate programs and to students enrolled in school part-time. These provisions are crucial given the college programs tailored for students with intellectual disabilities are typically non-degree certificate programs, and a reduced course load is an academic accommodation that allows students with disabilities to be successful. These provisions will expand the reach of the program and be inclusive of students with disabilities non-traditional post-secondary pathways. The scholarship program gives the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board the discretion to use any available revenue, including legislative appropriations, grants, and donations from any public or private source for this purpose. A scholarship program will be a crucial step to leveling the playing field, increasing access to higher education, and improving potential for long-term economic growth for students with disabilities. We have witnesses here today that can speak more on this issue, and I understand we have a resource witness. Members, thank you for your time and yield for questions and reserve the right to close.
Mr. Rainey, thank you. Chair calls Ashley Ford. Welcome back.
Hello, thank you.
We show you registered as Ashley Ford, testifying on behalf of the ARC of Texas for the legislation.
That's correct.
Thank you, ma'am.
Given that there are so many barriers to higher education for students with disabilities, we would like to see the passage of this bill because it would help us have more options to fund higher education for students with disabilities. We know that fewer than 1 in 3 high school graduates with disabilities go on to enroll in a Texas college within 2 years of high school graduation. So if we're talking about how to, obtain the 60 by 30 goal that we have, definitely establishing the Texas Scholarship Program for students with disabilities would be beneficial. Existing scholarship opportunities fail to account for the accommodations that students with disabilities need to be successful, and so that's why creating a scholarship program specifically for students with disabilities would be beneficial. So thank you.
Ms. Ford, thank you. Members, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Sabrina Gonzalez Salcedo. Are you just signed up as a resource? Or
No.
You are gonna, okay. We have you registered as Sabrina Gonzalez Salcedo, testifying on behalf of Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities testifying on the legislation?
Yes, it's
Thank
a
you.
mouthful, I know.
Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to provide comments today on the establishment of the Texas Students with Disabilities Scholarship Program. TCDD draws from the values identified in the Federal Developmental Disabilities Act. And in regard to higher education, TCDD supports the position that students with developmental disabilities deserve the preparation and support necessary to successfully transition into higher education and ultimately meaningful employment post-graduation. This committee is well aware of how inaffordability is a great barrier for many students to access higher education, and this is exactly the case with many students with disabilities. As has already been established, there are lots of scholarship programs on the market that many students have the ability to apply to, but in the case of students with disabilities, there are many barriers in place preventing them from applying to and being eligible for many of these scholarship programs. Some of those barriers include eligibility being conditioned on full course load and academic accommodation for many students with disabilities to be able to finish their post-secondary programs is to take a reduced course load in order to go at a pace that makes sense for their own timeline. In addition to that, many of the programs specifically for students with intellectual and developmental disabilities, so-called non-traditional post-secondary programs are ineligible for many of these scholarships. And so we know that the establishment of this program would benefit many students with disabilities across the state of Texas. And as such, TCDD finds the aims of the bill to be consistent with our mission, guiding principles, and public policy priorities. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Members? Seeing none, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Chair calls Augustine Villarreal. Welcome back.
Thank you. So
Hang on, let's get you in here. We show you registered as Augustine Villarreal, testifying on behalf of yourself for the legislation, is that correct?
Yep.
Thank you, sir.
Hello, my name is Augustine Villarreal, and I'm a student at the E4 program at the University of Texas, and I support House Bill 5148. We need programs at the University of Texas. We need more scholarships for people with disabilities to get more education. Scholarships will help more students to go to college, like E4 Texas. College helps people with disabilities be independent and live on their own and have a job one day. Students with disabilities need to learn how to do boundaries, how to do budgeting, and how to advocate on their own and advocate for others. Have a voice. You need money to go to college, and some disabled people do not have money. Scholarships will help those students go to college. E4 has benefited me because it made me be independent. Being a student at E4 has taught me about boundaries and independence and ethics and moral values that are important to me. I have studied how films portray people because they would be discriminated. They would made what's called not to judge other people with disabilities because then they will be discriminated against. Because planning to get a job, because learning how to be a teacher since at E4, I'm planning to get a job as a teacher assistant in the Houston School District or maybe work at a disability rights advocacy organization district, or maybe work at or as teacher assistant in the school. As E4 has taught me become a passionate advocate for other people with disabilities. I'm very proud of that. I want other people with disabilities to learn how to advocate for each other too. Other people with disabilities who might not be able to pay for a program like E4 Texas deserve to have the same opportunity that I do. More scholarships for people with disabilities is one of the best ways for the state of Texas to make sure that people with disabilities are independent and led happy lives. Thank you for your time.
Augustine, that was awesome. Thank you, sir. Members? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 5148? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Mr. Rainey to close.
Thank you, Chairman Kimple and members. I ask for your favorable consideration. I close.
If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, HB 5148 is pending. Chair lays out HB 3631 and recognizes Dr. Lalani to explain the bill. Dr. Lalani, you have a committee substitute, is that correct?
Yes.
Representative Cole offers a committee substitute to HB 3631. Go ahead, sir.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman and members of the committee, for allowing me to lay out HB 3631, which seeks to further educate college students on where to receive mental health services on campus. Chairman, I do have a community substitute. I have worked with the University of Texas on this substitute language, and all the community substitute does is to clarify that in addition to providing a map identifying location on the campus that offer mental health services, an institution must include information on how to access the services. Additionally, this requires that in-person tour must include a visit to the mental health service location that offers services to all students of the institution. Members, college is the time of great transition and growth, but it can also be time of increased stress, anxiety, and other mental health challenges. That's why it's crucial that we ensure that the college students have access to the support and care they need. But most importantly, make sure that they know where to receive that support and care in time of crisis. According to the American College Health Association survey conducted in 2019, among undergraduate students, 63% felt overwhelming anxiety and 42% felt so depressed that it was difficult to function in the past year. This troubles me both as a physician and as a father of two university-going sons. Mental health issue can interfere with academic performances, leading to low grades, increased dropout rates, decreased likelihood of graduating on time. However, intervention is crucial for treating mental health issues and preventing them from becoming more severe. Suicide is the second leading cause of death among college students, and the rate has been increasing over the past decade. According to the National Institute of Mental Health, the suicide rate among young adults aged 15 to 24 has increased by 50% from 2007 to 2018. We must do everything we can to prevent that number from increasing, and making our college students aware on the physical location of the mental health services will show them exactly where to go at the time of crisis. According to the Journal of Nervous and Mental Disease, only 30% of students who need help actually gets help. Part of this is due to the lack of awareness of available resources and financial concern. By providing information and resources, we can help a student overcome barriers to accessing care and ensuring they are able to maintain their mental health and academic success. In conclusion, ensuring that students are knowledgeable about mental health services, resources, and their location is crucial for promoting their well-being and academic success. Let's work together to ensure that all students have access to the care they need. Thank you, members. I reserve the right to close.
Thank you, Dr. Lalani. We'll give you that right.
All right, the chair calls Thomas Parkinson. The chair calls Thomas Parkinson. Somebody seen him? All right, we'll mark him as being for the bill but not testifying. The chair calls Angela Ott. Morning, Angela. We have you as Angela Ott, representing the Hogg Foundation for Mental Health, and you're neutral on the bill.
Correct.
All right, proceed.
All right. Good morning, members of the committee and chair. As stated, this bill ensures that information on available campus mental health resources and suicide prevention resources, along with a campus map of behavioral health services, is provided to all entering students at institutes of higher learning. Currently, the Texas Education Code stipulates that only full-time students receive this information upon enrollment. However, we know that there's a changing landscape in higher education, and we need to consider altering this requirement in order to reach all the students. The most recently available data estimates that around 37% of higher ed students attend part-time, and current statute may prevent these students from receiving potentially life-saving information such as suicide prevention resources. In 2020, suicide was the second leading cause of death in Texas for people aged 10 to 24, but researchers estimate that the exact number of suicides is likely higher due to a multitude of reasons. While these rising numbers warrant concern, we know that protective factors such as education on suicide prevention and access to behavioral health care on campus can mitigate the risk. Extending suicide prevention information to all students at institutes of higher learning aligns closely with several strategies within the Texas State Plan for Suicide Prevention 2023 to 2028, which has been developed in partnership with various public and private partners across the state to improve suicide prevention, intervention, and postvention outcomes in Texas. This bill creates a really simple requirement to provide this information to any student seeking higher education with the state. Thank you. Any questions?
Members, anybody got any questions?
Did I understand that you testified on the bill?
Yes, correct, on the bill. The Hogg Foundation, we provide education and background.
We had you, oh no, I'm sorry. We had her on. I'm looking at something wrong on my fault.
All good. All right, anything else?
Members, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, the chair calls Hayden Cohen. Ms. Cohen, we have you as Hayden Cohen, representing Young Invincibles and yourself, and you're for the bill.
That is correct.
All right, proceed.
Good morning, members. Just a quick refresher, my name is Hayden Cohen, and I'm an advocate with Young Invincibles. I'm in support of House Bill 3631 and would appreciate your vote for it too. This bill ensures that every single enrolled student, whether part-time or full-time, will be informed of the on-campus mental health support services and offices. This is another one of those bills that from afar doesn't seem to make a huge difference, but when you're a student starting out, the likelihood is that you will struggle with your mental health while getting adjusted to a new school climate. So having this information about resources readily available goes a long way. I'm a college student in Houston, and I do have a long history of suffering with mental illness and needing additional support. Oftentimes, accessing the affordable care, even just someone to talk to like a therapist, is daunting and a difficult task. I worked up the courage to approach a total of about 4 people, including my professors and advisors, to ask where on-campus support is, and I somehow received 3 different answers. Not quite sure why. After clicking through countless links on the school website, I was able to find out where the office is actually located. None of the responses were where it was located. This is why it's crucial for the location of these resources to be pointed out on tours and marked clearly on maps of the campus. The smallest thing like this can make a world of difference. It's extremely nerve-wracking to be a new student in a school and to call up several different offices or ask professors where to find help, especially given the stigma around mental health care. Well, when these established mental health care resources aren't openly pointed out and made known to students, the embarrassment students may feel to continue to inquire about support on campus can be enough to put them off of trying to receive that much needed support. This is what leads to further harm and social and emotional damage, yes, including suicide, amongst the student body. The goal should be for students to access these resources as effortlessly and as easily as possible so they're not discouraged to receive help. House Bill 3631 will ensure that. So as a college student, I ask for your support. Thank you for your time.
Where do you go to school?
I'm at Houston Community College at the moment.
Oh, very good. Members, any other questions? All right, thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you.
The chair calls Naomi Cruz. Ms. Cruz, we have you as Naomi Cruz, representing Young Invincibles and yourself, and you're for the bill.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, proceed.
Okay. Good morning, Representative Kemple and honorable members of the committee. My name is Naomi Cruz, and I'm a policy fellow at Young Invincibles. Today, I will be testifying in support of House Bill 3631. Public institutions of higher education should be required to provide information regarding the mental health services they have available to incoming students, both full-time and part-time. COVID-19 has led to widespread concerns about the impact that the pandemic has had on college students' mental health. The pandemic laid bare the fragility of our existing mental health support systems and services and emphasized the need for improvement. As much as students struggle to access mental health and counseling services before COVID-19, the gap between students' needs and the available support has only expanded. Surveys of college students conducted after March 2020 have repeatedly suggested that distress among college students has greatly increased. Mental health concerns such as depression and anxiety are closely linked to stress, and college students may be particularly vulnerable to these conditions. The pressure to succeed academically, financial concerns, and social pressures can all contribute to feelings of anxiety and depression. Tragically, suicide is now a leading cause of death among young people, including college-age students ages 15 to 34-year-old. According to the National College Health Risk Behavioral Survey, approximately over 1,000 suicides happen on college campuses per year. Since 2017, 3 people have died of suicide at Agnes Arnold Hall at the University of Houston's main campus. Around 25% of college students know of someone who has died as a result of suicide, and 40% know of someone who has attempted. We are now seeing that stress and pressure of college life can exacerbate mental health concerns and increase the risk of suicide thoughts and behaviors. In a recent Young Invincibles report on the state of mental health in higher education in Texas, it was found that 2-year institutions in Texas, which serve over 75,000 students based on the enrollment count from the fall of 2021, do not possess adequate resources to support their students. They don't have crisis counseling, suicide prevention, and substance use prevention programs. This is a troubling statistic, especially since over 50% of students who dropped out of due to mental health related reasons do not receive any mental health services and support. Mental health problems can affect a student's energy level, dependability, mental ability, and optimism, thus hindering their performance. Issues can present themselves through depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and addiction. These barriers exist because of a lack of access to healthcare, busy academic schedules, limited to availability of hours of services, and a lack of information of what services are offered to students. Every student deserves access to programs that promote their health and well-being. Lawmakers can help increase access to mental health for students by strengthening guidance to decrease the stigma and improve awareness of available healthcare. I believe that this bill is a fantastic first step in the right direction that can lay the important groundwork for future bills that can further develop the mental health services available on campuses. In conclusion, it is imperative that this requirement is established so that public institutions of higher education provide this critical information regarding mental health services to incoming students. This information should be just as standard as a universal as a syllabi. Since the disruption of the pandemic, we have already seen massive innovation taking place in the mental health services available at select campuses, including efforts to increase access to information. This pattern must be continued in order to keep improving the mental health assistance that Texas provides to students across all institutions of higher learning. Thank you for your time, Chair Kemple, and I hope that you take this testimony into consideration.
Thank you. Please show Mr. Busey present. Members, do we have any questions? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Chair calls Parker Lacombe.
Good morning.
Good morning. We have you registered as Parker Lacombe, testifying on behalf of American Foundation for Suicide Prevention for the legislation.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Beautiful. Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak with you today. Again, my name is Parker Lacombe, and I'm here on behalf of the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention in support of House Bill 3631. To repeat some of the things that have been said this morning, suicide is the 11th leading cause of death in the state of Texas, and it's the second leading cause of death in our children, the ages of 10 to 24 years old, as well as 25 to 34 years old in the state of Texas. We also know that the age at which most young people are entering into higher education is the same time at which we see the peak of onset for both mental health and substance use challenges. Most folks, 75% of those cases, we're seeing this before the age of 24. With that, we understand the need for suicide prevention resources in higher education settings. However, having a resource available is simply not enough. There was a study done back in 2010 that showed that 42%, of college students acknowledge that suicide is a problem on North American campuses. But even of those students, only 26% were even aware of a supportive program targeted towards suicide prevention. Now, the study was done in 2010, and we have seen that suicide rates have increased significantly since then. However, research also shows one of the greatest barriers to people receiving services is social stigma. House Bill 3631 will help us take suicide prevention to the next step by having a preceptor, an actual human being, not a map online, not a piece of paper that you were handed, but a person to help walk with this person, the student struggling to receive services, makes a huge impact. We are showing students that we have a commitment to their health and that even when they are in a place where they cannot help themselves or serve themselves, we still care about their life. When there are obstacles to receiving care, it ultimately serves as a deterrent for folks to seek that care. And I believe that we should be creating opportunity for everyone to get help. In closing, I would like to ask the committee to vote yes and support House Bill 3631 because suicide is preventable. And increasing access and availability of services will ultimately help us save lives. Thank you for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, thank you. Is there anyone else wishing to testify on for or against HB 3631? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Dr. Lalani to close on this bill.
Thank you, members. I cannot stress enough the importance of ensuring that students are knowledgeable about mental health resources on college campus. In-person tour will certainly help with prevention, be proactive, and develop the relationship and rapport with the mental health service providers. And we have seen many times that even though we give information to the students when the crisis happens, they don't know where it is or how to access. And that's why so less of a people go out. So making that in-person visit will certainly help because I believe one life lost is one too many. Thank you. With that, I close.
Thank you, Dr. Lalani. The committee substitute for HB 3631 is withdrawn. If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing no objection, HB 3631 is pending.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Chair lays out HB 1361 and recognizes Representative Morales Shaw to explain the bill.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman Kemple, Vice Chair Dennis. Thank you so much for letting me lay out HB 1361. It's an important bill that's about parenting students who are in college. 1 in 4 is a parent currently, yet the attainment rates for these students is very low for obvious reasons. So I'll talk a little bit about what 1361 does, and I also gave a handout that's show and tell, one-pager, easy to follow. So as I said, 1 in 4 Texas students enrolled in post-secondary education is seeking a degree while at the same time raising a child or children. In fact, a lot of you know me personally. I have 4 kids. I went to college for 7 years, and I had 4 kids during those years. So I graduated with 4 kids and a law degree. So I know the struggles of being a parent and going to college. The statistics show that these parent students are much less likely to complete college. Although the statistics are not well kept and scant, we think there are a lot more than what we know about students who don't attain graduation that have kids. The majority are women, but we know that 1.7 million are fathers too, so it's both. These people are more likely to be employed and work long hours, and 2/3 of the parent students surveyed report missing school because of childcare. not having it, or having to stay home with kids, or kids that are not well. So the bill requires, 1361 requires institutions of higher education to designate an employee to act as a liaison to parents or guardians of a child that's under the age of 18, to provide guidance and information on social and health services, eligible benefits, campus resources, and student success strategies, but specifically designed for parenting students. It also requires the university to collect demographic and outcome data on student parents to better identify and understand what their needs are, what the population is, and what can be done to help them with their attainment rates. This bill is so important because we know that with a college degree, life looks a lot brighter for most people. This bill enables parent students to complete their degrees by increasing their likelihood of graduating. It helps them to meet the pay for childcare costs and needs that other resources will make available to them. It improves their graduation rate, as I said, by adapting them to the campus that they're at. And it, most importantly, critically, it bridges the gaps in college completion rates between students who don't have children and students who are parenting while they're going to college. And I will remain open for any questions that you might have and reserve my right to close.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, we'll give you that right. We'll call you back up. Chair calls Naomi Cruz. Welcome back.
Hello.
We have you registered as Naomi Cruz, testifying on behalf of Young Invincibles and yourself for the legislation.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Well, I'm back here again. I'm policy fellow. We're a multi-issue organization that is basically committed to elevating the voices of young adults in the political process and also expanding opportunities for people the ages of 18 and 34-year-olds. Today, I will be testifying in support of House Bill 1361. Parenting students are an important student community, making up 1 of every 5 students nationally and an estimated 1 in 4 Texas students. It is essential to recognize and support the unique needs of parenting students in higher education. For instance, 2/3 of student parents surveyed in Texas reported missing school due to childcare reasons, and only 1/3 of student parents were able to attain a degree or certificate within 6 years of enrollment. It is estimated that most parenting students leave school for preventable reasons, including a lack of childcare, inability to rebound from costly emergencies, and family financial responsibilities. A parenting student liaison could play a critical role in helping to connect parenting students with these resources and support services. For example, a liaison can provide information about childcare options, including subsidized care or on-campus childcare centers. They can connect students with academic support services such as tutoring, advising, and mentoring to help parenting students balance their academic responsibilities while also caring for their children. And they could help parenting students navigate financial assistance programs such as an emergency loans or grants, and play a role in capturing crucial information so that we can have reliable data on these students and know how we can best support them moving forward. Statistics suggest that providing staff support and resources can be essential in helping parenting students succeed. The fact that 56% of student parents identify a staff person available to address their needs as one of the most helpful services underscores the importance of having a designated parenting student liaison or support staff who can help connect students with resources and support. At the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, where there is a student parent center, the graduation rate of student parents is an impressive 70%. This highlights the positive impact that providing comprehensive support services and resources can have on the success of parenting students. Finally, the fact that many student parents identify a lack of recognition and support specific to their needs on college and university campuses underscores the importance of taking steps to better support the student population. Providing more information about resources available to parents, designating parenting student liaison or support staff can be important steps in improving support for parenting students and promoting equity in higher education. By investing in the education and support of parenting students, we can not only improve their economic prospects, but also benefit society as a whole. Providing affordable and accessible childcare, financial aid, and other support services can help parent students balance their responsibility as students and parents and improve their chances of obtaining a degree. This in turn can lead to greater economic stability, improved well-being for families, and a positive impact on society as a whole. For these reasons, we ask that the committee support the passage of House Bill 1361. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Members, thank you for being here. Chair calls Bara Atal. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. We show you registered as Bara Atal, testifying on behalf of yourself for the legislation.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning. I'm so thankful to be here. My name is Bara Tal. I live here in Austin, Texas. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine, a wife and mother of two. Today I'll be testifying in support of House Bill 1361. I graduated with my doctorate summer 2022, and I could not have done it without the support of my loving husband, family, and friends. I started my graduate school journey in 2015, and I thought graduate school was hard. I didn't know what was coming for me. Even though I had such great support from my husband and family, I still felt alone. Being a mother and student are both full-time jobs that are a constant struggle to keep in balance. I remember just a handful of students in my program were parents and guardians, and I even met some parents along the way that dropped out of the program because of lack of resources and to keep going. They were the most brilliant people I've ever met, and I hope they decide to continue in the future. I even had to slow down on classes per semester of the semester load, but I knew giving up was not an option, despite the fact of how hard it was. My top constant challenges throughout my experience as a parent and student was resources on childcare. It took me a year long of touring, calling to find the perfect fit for my kids. My husband had a demanding job and also required long hours. In medicine, there's very long days in clinicals and book studies. After hours childcare and weekend childcare was very, very hard to find. I found a great babysitter to come to my house while I did my studies out of regular child care hours. Throughout my journey, I had to constantly check in with my mental health and make sure self-care was a priority. Making academic deadlines and attending to children, especially when things came up when they were sick, was really hard. I believe that having a liaison would have helped me find the perfect resources for all of the troubles that came to me. Today I ask for the members of Higher Education and Chair Kimmel to please consider passing HB 1361 to help parents that could potentially be going through my experience. I truly believe it will help more parents and brilliant people to finish their degrees on a timely manner and make a positive change into this world. Thank you for your time and considering my testimony in support of HB 1361.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Members, do we have any questions? No, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else wish to testify on for or against HB 1361? Seeing none, Chair recognizes Ms. Morales-Shaw to close on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. This bill is about supporting families and children. It's about raising the tide for everyone for a better society. We know that when parents graduate from college, they earn more money, they're a good example for their kids, and their kids are more likely to go to college. When I graduated after 7 years and I had 4 kids, fate would have it that my husband died the same year that I graduated from law school. So fortunately, I had a law degree, and it was helpful in raising my 4 kids. I don't know what that would have looked like today. My 4 kids are all college graduates, no college debt, and they're young professionals. So I hope that we can do this for all the other students who are parents, in Texas at least. Let's keep our families and children priority, and I ask for your favorable consideration for 1361. And if everybody loves this bill, please refer it to local and consent.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you soon on the floor.
If there's no objection, the bill will be left pending. Hearing none, HB 1361 is pending. Members, that concludes today's agenda. Is there any further business for the committee to address? If not, the chair moves to adjourn. Is there objection? Hearing none, the committee stands adjourned, subject to call of the chair.